This is part 3 of the drop stitch braid tutorial. Thank you so much for the comments and questions like this one. Feel free to ask any questions you have in the comments. I'd be happy to answer them as best as I can. So to keep the stitches from dropping off of the other needles, one thing is just to first take your time, and using the loom pick is the best way to do this. The second thing I would say, you don't want to be pulling up on the fabric too much so it's not going to be popping those needles or those other loops off of the needles. So try to keep it on the same plane, I guess I would say. Don't pull up too hard with your crochet hook. The hardest part is going to be this part where it's the last 2 loops on your crochet hook and trying to get them back onto those pegs. So one, using the crochet hook and your loom pick or a paper clip is really going to help at this point. Make sure you don't pull up too much with that crochet hook. And then also, if you can see, I put that loop underneath those bigger pegs. So you have those bigger pegs in between the needles. Make sure the fabric is up and underneath those pegs on all the different needles. So like where needle 1 and needle 2 is, there's 3 of those bigger pegs. Make sure the fabric's underneath those. That's going to help keep not only the fabric from popping off the other loops on your other needles, but it's also going to make it less tight to get those 2 loops that are on the crochet hook back onto those 2 pegs. And then as I'm doing this, again, I always like to do the first loop I take off the crochet hook onto the right peg, and then the second loop goes on the left peg. Lastly, another good tip I have is when all your braids are back on to your machine and now you're just wanting to crank the rest of your rows, get your loom pick and hold those loops that you added back onto the machine. Hold them down so those needles, when you start to go around, does not pop them off. If it pops them off, then you're going to have your drop stitch again, and you're going to have to redo your braid a little bit, like fixing the drop stitch. So you want it to hold down those loops of the yarn and kind of help it out so the needle can come up without popping them off, because you want them to hook up the new yarn. And once that's done, now those stitches are hooked together and you won't have any issues cranking your rest of your rows after that. So that's just my last tip. Just make sure you hold down these loops. Don't let them pop off when you're doing your first regular row after you're all done with your braids. So I'll show that one more time here with my loom pick as I'm going around to where the yarn holder is. Just hold down that loop of the yarn so the needle comes up, and I have to kind of help push it back down like so. And sometimes the little plies get stuck on those small pegs, but make sure it comes up and doesn't pop it off. And then this way you won't have any issues. And then now those needles will catch the new yarn from the yarn holder. And then once it's caught, now everything is secured into place, so nothing's going to pop off as you do the rest of your rows. So thank you so much for all the comments. If you have any other questions, please let me know in the comments below. And please like and follow for more videos and free tutorials like this one. Happy crafting!